Hey looters and general D&D enthusiasts, Flutes here to talk to you about D&D 5th edition feats. I want to talk about feats today that are more historical from the player's handbook and from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, those racial feats. There's a bunch of them I think are undervalued and should be considered by you for your characters. Some of them, especially the racial feats, make me want to play a character just with those feats alone. Let's get into it. Getting into my list in alphabetical order, I've got Bountiful Luck for Halflings. I love this feat. The Halflings already have a cool ability. When they roll a 1, they can re-roll it and see if they can improve, but they rarely critically fumble something as a result. So why not share that with your party? If you are in a party, the bigger the better. They're going to love you if you can prevent them from rolling 1s. Just stay within 30 feet of them and you can use this as a reaction. It's not as good if you're a class that already uses their reactions, such as a rogue for taking half damage from attacks at a little bit higher levels, and that sort of thing. So if you're already using reactions constantly, and most people aren't constantly using them, this will be useful for you. Your allies will praise you as you become the warden who keeps them from the dreaded crit fail. No one wants to see that in combat. The more attacks you have, the more likely you are to get a crit fail, but the more likely you can help them out with your reaction to not fail that. What really is awesome about Bountiful Luck is you can do it every round because it just takes your reaction. It makes it so you won't be able to use your own lucky ability to reroll 1s for the rest of the round. But if someone else is rolling a 1, you probably won't roll a 1 anyway, just probability's sake. So you might as well help them out. In addition, Bountiful Luck can actually function almost like giving you triple advantage. If you have advantage on a roll and one of those comes up as a 1, you can re-roll it. And your allies can benefit from that as well. So that means you had 3 chances to try to succeed at something. Or if it's disadvantage, you can kind of mitigate that disadvantage to not be so bad. Bountiful Luck makes me want to play a halfling just because the feat is so good. That's how excited I get about it. Next feat on my list is Charger from the Player's Handbook. This one does not get a lot of love, but it's so nice as a martial class to be able to move with a dash action to get where you need to be without having to sacrifice at least some offense. Rogues, for example, they can already use their bonus actions for a lot of things. So can monks, but guys like fighters, barbarians, paladins, they want to be able to run up to something, dash, if that pesky spellcaster got out of range with a teleport. They got to dash to get up to that spellcaster and make attacks. What's nice is that they can then do that bonus action if they ran in a straight line to even get plus 5 damage, or 10 plus 10 to their push if they want to shove the person. One thing that shouldn't be overlooked with this feat is that shoving, already you have the choice between pushing someone to the ground so they're knocked prone, or pushing them far away from you, up to 5 feet. With Charger, when you do that bonus action, you can do that plus 10 to your push, which means you can shove someone to ground as your bonus action, so they are prone, and push them away from you 10 feet. Usually when you do a shove action, you have to choose between the two, whether you're going to put some distance between them and you by pushing them away, or knocking them prone. Charger allows you to do both. Third feat going down my list alphabetically is Defensive Duelist. First of all, I love feats that scale with you as you level up. Defensive Duelist does that because it's based on your proficiency bonus. You do have to have a 13 dexterity to take it, but that's not too hard to do, especially if you're someone who's already wielding weapons. It should be noted that strength-based fighters, or martial combatants, whether you're a paladin or a barbarian, if you want to invest in strength, you can use a finesse weapon with your strength. You don't have to use dexterity. In fact, you could invest in the 13 dexterity to get Defensive Duelist, go all strength, have your heavy armor and everything. You can even use a shield, but you could use a rapier as your finesse weapon to bat away an attack. And you get to know if that attack was going to hit you in the first place. If it was just guessing like the shield spell does, it wouldn't be as good. But this one you get to hear from the DM, is this going to hit me or not? And if they say yes, You don't have to hear the number. Your DM might stumble a little bit there and actually accidentally tell you the number, which makes this feat even better. But you can hear if it's going to hit you or not and say, I'm going to defensive duel, and try to parry away that attack. Even spellcasters can use this if they're worried about their defenses. However, the shield spell is better in that it lasts a whole round against all attacks, while defensive duelist uses your reaction to only defend against one attack. Spellcasters are probably better off just not getting attacked at all. On that note, because this uses your reaction, again, you don't want to use this or pick this feat on characters that are already using their reactions a lot. You want to pick someone who's already free to use their reactions for other things, like clerics. Clerics would be a great class to use defensive duelist. In fact, most classes could probably benefit from this in some way. Just be wise because it's your reaction economy. If you have a dungeon master whose style is to throw lots of monsters at you, swarm you, this is not as good of a feat. If your DM style is usually like the BBEG, big bad evil guy, one big thing is coming at you to try to get at you, defensive duelist is great because you're not being attacked by many things. You're being maybe attacked by one big attack from something. If you can avoid getting hit, that's huge. It's like healing yourself dozens of damage potentially. Going back to Xanathar's guide, we've got Drow High Magic. They can cast Detect Magic at will. Already a lot of people love this spell. I don't love it personally because I think it gets overhyped. I find that Detect Magic is often like you use it to see if something was magical and you already knew it was, and you don't actually learn anything new typically. I know there are exceptions. That's just the overhype that I perceive. But still, it's great that you can cast something at will all you want. The DM might hate you for it, but it's great to have, and your party's not going to have other people pick Detect Magic when they could be picking more useful spells. You also can use Levitate and Dispel Magic, two very good spells that don't depend too much on your spellcasting ability. So this could be useful for any drow, regardless of their class. Dispel Magic is often going to be adequate at 3rd level, and the skill check to dispel higher level spells, if that comes up, you still have a chance to succeed. And Levitate, you can cast it to get out of a lot of situations where you just need to be able to get yourself off the ground and not be so gravity challenged. After all, the Aarakocra is considered very strong because it can fly, so let's make Drow kind of fly as well, huh? Sticking with the racial feats in Xanathar's guide, we've got Dwarven Fortitude. I love this feat for 2 reasons. The dodge action is underused in the game typically, and hit dice are typically underutilized. With Dwarven Fortitude, when you dodge, you can use your hit dice to heal yourself, which adds your constitution and everything. This also works if you are a class or character in general that can use your bonus action to dodge, such as the monk. They can spend a key point to do patient defense and gain the dodge action. If they are a dwarf and they have Dwarven Fortitude, when they do that, they can actually spend hit dice to heal themselves as if they're taking a mini little short rest. This feat also comes with a stat boost, which is always nice to see. It's easier to take a feat when a stat boost comes with it. I think Wizards of the Coast was also smart to limit this feat to in combat only, so that you can't just use the dodge action outside of combat and basically get a short rest anytime you want. Smart move. Now let's talk about Elven Accuracy, a feat that took the D&D world by storm, that made everyone want to be Legolas again, because you can get triple advantage on your attacks. It also comes with a stat boost. It's just for elves, but man is it good. It's what people picture when they play an elf. They want to be a precise, accurate, efficient killing machine, and Elven Accuracy does that. There is math that has been done on Elven Accuracy to show that it does have diminishing returns as you get higher levels because of the bounded accuracy in D&D 5th edition, which means that armor class doesn't usually go up a ton for monsters compared to like low CR monsters. And so you're usually going to hit anyway, even if you didn't have triple advantage. It's kind of like the train of thought that people have figured out when they do the math. But still, it's so nice to have triple the chance to hit your enemies. In fact, it's not just weapon attacks, it's any attack roll. You can get triple advantage. But how do you get advantage? That's up to you. Like a barbarian elf could just reckless attack and they could get advantage all day. Easy. Other classes might need to hide or use a spell or use a maneuver. Elven Accuracy is also a premium feat because there's no limit to how many times it can work for you. Sure, like if you don't do any fighting, it's not going to help much. But when you get in combat and you get that triple advantage, you're going to be glad you had it. Anyone who likes to fish for critical hits is going to love Elven Accuracy because they get an extra chance to get a critical hit. It's about a 5% chance. I also like this feat because it rewards teamwork. If your allies can use the help action or anything to help you get advantage, they can make sure that you are going to land those hits. Especially if you're a bowman and you're using like sharpshooter and you really need to hit to get that plus 10 every time. Or if you're a great weapon master and you're swinging this huge anime sword and you need to get that plus 10 damage to just cleave through everything in sight, your allies need to make sure that you can succeed. Next, coming in hot is Flames of Phlegethos for Tieflings from Xanathar's Guide. This is a great feat, and it rivals the Elemental Adept in the Player's Handbook feat section. I don't like Elemental Adept, but I do like Flames of Phlegethos. It gives you a stat boost. That's huge already. It lets you reroll fire spell damage if you roll a 1, where Elemental Adept will just turn that 1 into a 2. Not as swingy. This one actually rerolls the dice, which includes cantrips like Firebolt, which as you get to higher levels, you're going to have more and more dice in that Firebolt, and you're going to want to reroll ones. In addition, when you cast a fire spell, you're going to get a cloak of flame about you, very tiefling-like to bring up that hellfire all around you. And it's going to punish people for attacking you with a d4 of fire damage, and it puts out a little bit of light. And that's just a free thing that happens to you when you cast a fire spell. Again, these feats that are not limited to how many times you can use their effects are primo. The only downside is that fire damage is one of the most resisted damage types in the monster manual. So be wise if you're fighting a lot of demons. Maybe this isn't the best feat for you to take, and maybe that darn Elemental Adept would be useful just to get through their resistance, because that at least is a nice part of it. Moving on to H in the Player's Handbook, we've got Healer. Healer gives you automatic guaranteed healing as long as you have a healer's kit. You also get it to scale with your level because it's based on the target's hit dice. So if you're healing an NPC that's got a few hit dice, you won't heal them as much. But you and your party members are going to keep getting healed a little bit more for every level that you get. If you're in a campaign where maybe you're not going to be able to refresh your healer's kit very often, it might be difficult to pay this off. But I bet you could arrange something with your DM where if you're a druid and you're into herbalism, you could scrounge up some medical herbs and add them to your healer's kit to refresh some charges. Pretty easy to negotiate. It also goes well with Inspiring Leader, which comes up later. You can only heal someone once per short rest with it, but it does refresh on a short rest instead of a long rest, which is nice. It'll make your party more durable and able to spend more time adventuring in a given adventuring day. Next up in the H section is Heavy Armor Master. If you're someone who uses heavy armor, you probably like being tanky and not being hit. And when you do get hit, you curse their name because they beat your high armor class. But you can scoff back at them if you can resist their slashing, bludgeoning, and piercing damage by 3, reducing the damage. So it's not like damage resistance, but it is a flat damage reduction, which is so rare and unheard of in D&D 5th edition. You also get a strength boost with this, making it even more worth it. You don't have to worry about leaving your stats behind because Heavy Armor Master will keep your strength up as well. One of the downsides with this is there is some wiggle room on what DMs consider to be a magical weapon, because magical weapons will still cut through your resistance. You won't get the damage reduction. So what counts as a magical weapon? Ask your DM first. If they have a very loose interpretation, this feat might not be as good. Like if any magical creature with claws, like a Quaggoth or a not claws but a flail snail, or even a dragon, do those count as magical weapon attacks? That's the two parts, magical and a weapon. Do they count? That's up to your DM. Figure it out before you take this feat. Otherwise, you might be disappointed. But in the vast majority of games, I bet you're going to be glad you took this one. I mentioned Inspiring Leader earlier, one of my favorites. If you have some charisma to invest, 13 to be exact, you can become an inspiring leader every time you long rest to a handful of your allies, giving them temporary hit points that scales as your charisma and your level increase. Again, I love feats that scale with your progression. You just have to remember to remind your party that they have new temporary hit points every time you rest. And obviously, don't try to do a 10-minute speech like the feat says every time you use it. Just roleplay a quick little thing where you inspire your party and say, "We shall not be stopped today. We've come this far," and blah, blah, blah. Have some fun with it. Try saying something goofy. I promise, like, as your short rest ends, it's fun to have a little laugh with your party as they watch you try to say something inspiring. Mobile is the next feat. A lot of people already like this one, but I want to talk about what's not considered with it. When you take the mobile feat, yeah, your speed goes up by 10. Yeah, when you dash, you can avoid difficult terrain. Also good. And by avoid, I mean you're not slowed down by it. But when you attack someone, whether you hit or miss, it's like a free disengage. So picture this. There's a necromancer that you need to get to, but they're keeping a good 30 feet behind their little undead wall they've got. And you're a fighter who wants to get to that necromancer. But there's two skeletons right in front of you. You can attack both skeletons and then move past them if you don't want to take their opportunity attacks, because mobile will make it so they can't attack you now. You move up your 30 feet to the necromancer, and next turn you can attack. If you didn't have mobile, you would have to either risk the attacks from the skeletons as you take opportunity attacks, or you would need to take out the skeletons first, and they make meat shields, well, bone shields, I guess, for the necromancer. That necromancer does not want you in his face. Mobile also pairs well with other feats like Charger, which I mentioned earlier, because Charger gives you more incentive to dash at people, and so you won't be affected by that difficult terrain along the way. Additionally, if you take the Mage Slayer feat, moving up to that necromancer is even more important because you'll have advantage on saving throws when they're 5 feet away from you, when they cast spells at you. And you can attack them as a reaction when they cast that spell. If you were stuck back there at the bone wall of skeletons, you'd be having a rough time. But Mage Slayer, coupled with mobile, gets you where you need to be. Additionally, rogues can dash as a bonus action, so mobile's even better for them to avoid that difficult terrain. Caveat, though, mobile is not as important if you're playing in a game that is more theater of the mind and it's not using a grid or minis or any sort of like strict mapping of where everyone is. A lot of the times, in my experience, if you're playing theater of the mind, monks, for one thing, and the mobile feat are just not as important, because usually it's like, well, how far away am I? And the DM's like, oh, you can get to him, and they just call it good. That's not so fun if you invested in your movement speed and everyone can just get where they need to be anyway. Getting close to the end of my list, I've now got Moderately Armored, and I know most people don't like these like armor upgrade feats that just give you more proficiency in armor, but this one's good because classes like rogues that only get light armor can get a boost to their dexterity, they can get better armor, and they can get shield proficiency. Rogues, for example, usually only have light armor and are heavily dependent on their dexterity. Rightfully so. They're rogues. They like dexterity. But until your dexterity is 20, you can get a nice AC boost by getting moderately armored feet so that you can get medium armor. Your dexterity will still be added to it, though it can't add all +5. It's just +2. And you get shield proficiency. That's also big with this feat. That's another +2. And you get a stat boost, so you can round out your dexterity to an even number, which might make your AC go up again if it wasn't high enough. Rogues probably already have high dexterity, so that's not a problem. But other classes that maybe want to get better armor could benefit from it. After all, that's probably like a +4 permanent boost to your AC with this feat. Not bad. And last of all, I want to talk about Pole Arm Master for a second. I know people know this is already good, but I want to point out that it's even better because of that bonus action attack you get with the pummel of whatever pole arm you are using. For example, a Pact of the Blade Warlock gets an invocation that allows them to add their charisma modifier to the damage of their pact weapon. If you're using a pole armor as a pact weapon, every extra attack you can get with it, including this bonus action pummel attack, will get your charisma bonus to it, as well as your strength or as normal. If you have Hex on top of that, you're adding a lot of damage to this pummel attack. So even though the pummel is only a D4 to start, if you hit with that, you can be adding up quite a bit more damage. Polearm Master pairs really well with Sentinel and Great Weapon Master. Sentinel can prevent people from running away from you, so you get that opportunity attack and stop them in their tracks. Great Weapon Master, especially with that pummel attack I mentioned before, you can still, whether you're swinging the front end or the back end of your polearm, you can do your Great Weapon Master, take a -5 to hit, and get potential +10 damage. So let's talk about the Pact of the Blade again. You get a D4 for the pummel, add your strength, add your charisma, add a D6 of hex damage, and add another +10 for a little pummel attack. That's some big damage. Yeah, those are the feats I wanted to talk about today. I would love to hear in the comments if you agree with anything I said, if anything I said stuck out and you were like, oh, I hadn't thought about that before. I like to talk with you guys and talk about feats. I like talking about D&D. So again, I'm Flutes. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and we're still a young budding channel here. We have a pretty flourishing website, flutesloot.com. Thanks again for listening. Talk to you guys later.